So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Fantastic to see so many people able to make the live session. Today's webinar will focus on building communities and how to harness resident satisfaction. I'm Jonny Wootten, Marketing Director at Spike, the leading property management and resident engagement software provider. And I'm delighted to be co-hosting this webinar with Hannah Marsh, co-founder and Chief Partnership Officer at HomeViews. We have some really fantastic guest speakers who have kindly joined us today. Louise Bentermine, General Manager at Moda, New York Square, and Nadia Dunn, Area Operations Manager at APO. For those of you who aren't aware, Spike and HomeViews have recently partnered to transform the way resident reviews are collected across developments. We've now integrated HomeViews into our Spike Living portal, so not only streamlining the resident review process, making it easier to leave reviews, but also making it a lot easier for residents to leave constructive feedback throughout the entire resident life cycle. So that's probably enough for me for now. I'll hand over to Hannah.
Thank you, Jonny. And as Jonny said, welcome and thank you for joining us today. We really wanted to take the opportunity through this partnership to sort of focus on community. It's something that's really important to Spike. It's something that's really important to HomeViews. It's something that we see consistently through our data on HomeViews, the impact that community and the way that communities have been built, particularly within build-to-rent developments, and the impact that has on resident satisfaction. So I was going to share a few sort of insights and thoughts from a kind of brand and marketing point of view about why building communities is so important. Jonny's also got some great data to share. And then we were going to go into a discussion with Nadia and Louise and really talk to them about their experiences. So, you don't want to hear too much from Jonny and I. We really want to sort of mine all the information from Nadia and Louise to understand their insights and their experiences. So please do ask questions. There's a Q&A button, and we will be sort of fielding some of those questions a little bit later on during the webinar to sort of make sure that you're getting some great advice from the people that really know on the ground. So as Jonny said, I'm co-founder and Chief Partnership Officer at HomeViews. HomeViews really kind of, I think we see the impact on site of reviews and customer advocacy. So I really wanted to spend a moment just talking about what customer advocacy is and why it's something that maybe you should be considering in your marketing if you're looking at either launching new schemes, you're working on your communities, the impact of reviews. So 93% of consumers say that online reviews influence their purchasing decisions. So you all see this in your everyday life, whether you're looking to go on holiday, book a restaurant, whether you're going to buy a new watch, you're probably going to be reading reviews. And actually, a lot of that can come through from actually building customer advocacy. So that begins with a company committing to understand and meet the needs of its customers. And you've got to listen to your customers and understand their needs, and that results in improving your products and services. That also results in higher retention and more satisfied customers who may recommend your products and services to their friends, family, and networks. And it's a really powerful way to support your marketing and your promotion. So I think it's just something for you to be considering and thinking about is customer advocacy as part of your marketing mix. So it isn't quick and it isn't easy to do. I'm sure Nadia and Louise will testify to that when we speak to them later. But it is the result of providing strong products, whatever sector that you're working in from a marketing point of view. And it's about excellent customer service on a consistent basis. So over time, adopting a strategy of focusing on customer needs and delivering a first-class customer experience can help you to cultivate a network of advocates. And that's really what reviews can help you to do. It's storytelling at its best. It's bringing to life your residents, sharing their experience, sharing what they're experiencing within their communities. And it's that personalized insight into what it's like to live there that can be such a powerful tool for you in either retention, but also in welcoming and advertising to new residents joining your community. And we see this in the evidence. So I think looking at the evidence for the benefits of community and friendliness, we compare on HomeViews build to rent, we compare that to other new build resident types, whether you're an owner or private tenant living within new build developments. And build to rent is the highest rated development type on HomeViews. We've looked at actually some of the analysis of what people say in their reviews. And on this graph, we've actually compared themes in all of our reviews. So they've looked at all reviews, so that would be all resident types in new build, against everyone in build to rent developments versus the top 20 build to rent developments for facilities. So those really at the top of their game. I think what stood out in terms of what people are writing about is the increased mention in those top 20 for concierge, helpfulness, community, friendly. And what comes across so passionately is a sense of feeling. It's not always necessarily about physical attributes of a building. It's about what it's like to be part of living in a building and the community. And we can see that very consistently in the reviews for the top performing and top rated developments on HomeViews. There's two lovely quotes here that we've pulled out, obviously with Louise and Nadia on the call, that we wanted to highlight. But the impact of reviews and using storytelling, customer advocacy, is that 72% of people say that they will trust online reviews as much as an in-person recommendation. So yes, it's absolutely, you will buy and look at a service or a product when you've been recommended it by a friend. But actually, when there are reviews and data, and certainly at least a minimum of 7 to 10 reviews on a brand or service, people will trust and look at those reviews as much as they would a recommendation from a friend. So some really great reviews from New York Square here and APO Barking, where people really talk about what it's like to live in that building, to be part of that community, and to make friends. So I'd really kind of encourage you to read lots of the reviews on HomeViews, because it's a really powerful way sort of actually to talk about why it's so impactful. So that's a little bit of upfront for me about why we think it's so important. Doesn't really answer the question about how you go about it, and how do you build the communities. Jonny's going to share some information now from Spike, and then we're going to dive into really kind of interrogating, I think, Nadia and Louise about how you actually go about building communities, and what they see in the communities that they've created so successfully. So Jonny, over to you.
Perfect, thanks Hannah. So flipping to the next slide. So we've really heard from Hannah briefly on the power of resident reviews, but there's also evidence and various studies out there that really show how tangible the impact of creating communities are. So for instance, without any friends living in their community, residents only have a 29% chance of renewing. That number jumps up to 47% if there's 7 or more friends within the building. So just really showing the importance of making residents feel connected to where they live. And similarly, people that are happy of the home are also happy in general. It seems like an obvious thing to say, but it just really shows again the impact of creating that happy, healthy home can have on the wider life. And finally, satisfied tenants are almost 3.5 times more likely to renew than dissatisfied tenants. So really highlighting how there's an opportunity for operators to check in with residents throughout the life cycle, throughout the tenancy, providing operators with a chance to hopefully turn a negative experience maybe in the early on into something positive, and hopefully helps them to renew. So moving on to the next slide. So we've done some analysis of our client base, looking into some of the data to see what were the most popular or most visited areas of our portals last year. And we found that the social areas of our portals were pretty popular. So some of the most popular clubs and forums, for example, included pet forums. I think everyone loves looking at nice, cute pictures of puppies and cats. Or I do anyway. Community forums, marketplaces, and general wellbeing clubs where residents tended to share mindfulness advice and check in with one another. So it's really nice to see. Secondly, amenity and event bookings. We saw over 6,500 events being held across our client base in 2022. And then top amenities booked included cinema rooms, gyms, and workspaces. And then finally, the news area of our portals were really well visited. This is where operators can share key updates on what's going on in and around developments, as well as sharing various different ideas and suggestions for residents, whether that's wreath making at Christmas, Easter egg hunt ideas to Halloween cocktail recipes. And really interestingly, all the areas I've just mentioned leads really well into building a community and bringing residents together, which ultimately, hopefully, will lead to positive reviews. So moving on, I'm really, as Hannah mentioned, I'm really keen to hear from our guest speakers on their views on how to really harness resident satisfaction in building communities. So Nadia, maybe one for you to kick off with. So how would you build a community and what things do you have to consider, especially as an operations manager?
Thanks, Jonny. So as Hannah has mentioned, obviously for residents, it's very important to feel a part of the community. And we as a managing agent, we always try and facilitate obviously this need by providing amenities. We have a lot of shared spaces for residents to use within our developments, such as the gym, co-working space, lounges, where playgrounds where parents can connect, co-working spaces where people who are working from home can have a chat and exchange some useful tips. We also organize events, so I think that's an amazing tool to connect people from different backgrounds, different sectors. And also we also provide them with resident app where people can exchange tips of, for the neighborhood, or create blogs for dog owners, babysitting or exercising clubs. With resident app, we only provide them with the actual app, and the rest of the content actually created by residents themselves, which is amazing because you can see how everyone, create clubs that they think will be useful for the rest of the, residents within the development, and you can see how they connect, find mutual grounds and make friends, and the community feel of the development is really, seen on the conversation on the apps. So yes, I mean, this is what we do within our developments to create the feel of community.
Fantastic, some great insight there, Nadia. So Louise, over to you. I guess as your role as general manager, how do you see, I guess, your role specifically and the things you do at Moda in terms of building and community? And I guess does technology play a role in terms of what the things you do as well?
Yeah, so I'm from a very traditional PRS background, and I think what brought me into Build to Rent was that community and being able to create that community and have a relationship with my residents. I think that's what sets Build to Rent apart from the rest of the wider rental market. People want to feel part of a community. It's almost like we've gone back 50 years when everybody knew the neighbours and you nipped next door to borrow a cup of sugar. And for us, tech is one piece in that puzzle to connect our residents. So at Moda, we talk a lot about neighbourhoods rather than communities. And tech facilitates us building these neighbourhoods. So through our apps, we can connect residents with doctors, with local businesses, with online fitness classes, as well as connecting to other residents through our chat forums, as Nadia was saying. So we see forums where we have marketplace forums. We see our app almost residents policing themselves. So if you have a noise complaint, residents are talking to each other on the app and they can quite often resolve that problem between them. We also use our social platforms and digital screens around the neighbourhoods to promote that community feel and to really break down that barrier between team and residents. So we put a lot of ourselves out there. So we're not just people that sit behind a desk, we're out front and centre. We put a lot of planning into our neighbourhoods so we can create spaces that naturally encourage people to get to know each other and chat, especially in our co-working spaces. We see people coming together to build their businesses together. So one example is we had somebody who was looking for a new website to be designed, and he just happened to be sat next to somebody who was a web designer, and now they work together. So it's kind of that organic growing the community that it feels natural to residents. It's not forced fun. We see students forming study groups and supporting each other through their exams and through the tough times. And once residents have made these initial connections, we find that they go on to be friends. So tech is kind of initiating those connections, but then the human contact comes in.
I think it's really
Absolutely.
interesting because they've both touched on some elements there around like what tech does, but how the residents get involved, but also how you have a role as a company, you know, whether or not you're kind of encouraging people to come together or it happens organically. You've kind of created platforms and opportunities with blog spaces, with tech and apps and marketplaces to sort of encourage it. Louise, are there certain roles or people within the organisation that take more responsibility for sort of encouraging that, and how important is that to have people in the team dedicated to kind of ensuring that a community is built, or is that everyone's responsibility, or is there certain roles in the team that you see that being important for?
So we do have a resident engagement manager on all of our buildings, and their key role is to go out and kind of create that community, host the events, join the events, but actually it's everybody plays a part in that. So for me, it's really important that my team are not stuck in an office, they're out in the front and centre and they're chatting to residents. And quite often we'll see, especially with the international residents that we have here, we might be the first friendly face that they've seen since they've come to the country. You know, they know nobody here, they know nothing about the country. So we almost become a surrogate friend / agony aunt / concierge / dog cuddler. And I think it's really important that when we're running events that we have those friendly faces there to break down the barriers, because it can be, if you're new to the country, if English isn't your first language or you're a bit shy, it can be a little bit intimidating joining a group of people. So by having one of my team there at each event, they know that there's a friendly face. They know that if they're getting sweaty in the gym, there's one of my team alongside them getting sweaty. And we just help to break down those barriers, and we introduce them to other residents. And it's almost like we're just making that initial connection, but then the residents take it the step further themselves.
And is this, just touching on that resident engagement manager, is that a role that most companies have employed, or is that quite unique to Moda? Is that something that have at APO? Is it the same job but different job titles, as it were, but across lots of companies? I just sort of wondered on your insight.
What I've seen from other providers is that we generally do have a resident engagement manager, but they do go by different titles and they will have different responsibilities. But I think key to their role is creating that community in that neighbourhood. Okay.
And you touched on it as well there, Louise, about people having different needs. So the fact that you've got a sort of people who might be international, English not their first language. Maybe Louise could answer it first and then going on to Nadia, but I think something that's often talked about is different demographics in build to rent. And I think traditionally, certainly when we launched 4 or 5 years ago, we'd speak to build to rent operators or communities. It was very much a kind of quite a narrow view of potentially the age range that was going to be living in a building. But now we hear more about single family housing. We hear about different sort of age ranges and communities living. So how do you kind of bring together and facilitate a kind of broader mix of demographics within a building? How does that play a part in community?
So somebody asked me this question last week. They said, are all your residents young? And I said, no, but they're all young at heart. And I think it's a mindset more than an age thing. So at Moda, we've got a massive mix of ages, of backgrounds. So I think we go against that stereotype that BTR is for young professionals only. So at Angel Gardens in Manchester, we've got 3 generations from one family. We've got the grandparents, the parents, and the grandchildren. I think that's where that resident engagement role is really key. They need to have a great contact list. They need to be able to understand our residents and what they're interested in and not be afraid to try new ideas. But they need to have the pulse on the finger. They need to have the finger on the pulse of the city that they're working in as well. Yeah. So we run silent movie nights, which are amazing, but they wouldn't work at another scheme where they don't have those particular residents. And again, our teams are just encouraged to chat, to get to know residents. And through the forums on the app and the experience, we find out what our residents enjoy, and it's generally not the stereotypical thing that you think they would enjoy.
Nadia, would you agree? What do you see at APO?
Yes, I agree with Liz. I think it's important to connect different, people from different backgrounds. A lot of people in our development come from abroad, and they don't have family or friends here in the UK. So what we normally do, we organize events which are, celebrating some of their festival seasons, and that way they will obviously meet, with other people from maybe similar background, or even people from the UK, make friends. And we received a lot of great feedback that, you know, they were grateful because they haven't had any friends within a country, and they were new to the country. They met a lot of people with similar views, you know, similar interests, and made friends with them. Same for example, we have a group of moms who, you know, do school pickups and school drop-offs, and they met within the development, and then they share sort of pick up and drop off, and I think it's great. They help each other. We always see them sitting at the, you know, play area after school and chatting away, even though they never knew each other before they moved into development. So I think it's good to create these little groups, you know, that have common interests, you know, and can help each other.
Yeah. Well, we're able to see in our data on HomeViews the communities and developments that offer sort of 24-hour concierge, that offer events. We can see the impact that has, and we can now analyze that in our product HomeViews Pro. You can actually see how that actually has a result. But I guess from your side, it's a cost, all of this, you know, having the team, the time, the energy. It's time to do that, to build a community. So I guess from a kind of results point of view, Nadia, do you see that in impacting resident retention in terms of building community? Is it worthwhile when it comes down to the sort of financial investment that you have to make from a people and time point of view in terms of what that actually results for as a business?
I think it's definitely worthwhile. We have high retention rates in one of our sites where we get a lot of positive reviews, as well as referrals. A lot of people walk in to the reception saying, "Oh, we've just read your review on HomeViews or Google reviews," and we understand it's an amazing place to live. Even though development is not brand new and nice and shiny, the customer service that we have on site is at the level that all our reviews are most of our reviews are 5-star or close to 5 stars. So in terms of retention, I mean, people would stay because they're happy, no matter whether, you know, sometimes you would have to, from year to year, you would have to increase rent naturally with obviously current inflation rate. But if people are happy with customer service and obviously the community that we have on site, the rent increase is almost nothing.
Yeah.
And
do you find that the same, Louise? What's your take on resident retention and community and how that kind of ties together?
I think HomeViews has a massive part to play in that, and I think HomeViews also has a big part to play in staff retention, which is really key. You know, we invest so much money in our people to create these communities and get to know residents that we don't want to lose them. And I can see in my team, they get a real buzz every time we get another 5-star review. So that's massive for us. And I think for us, community definitely is key. If you move out of one of our neighbourhoods, you're not just leaving behind your apartment, but you're leaving behind your friendship group too. So this year's been tough for a lot of people due to the cost of living crisis, but I think our residents understand that the value of the extras we provide makes us still good value for money, and our retention rate does reflect this. So we had one of our residents who wrote a really nice piece in the Times for us, where he talked about not having the cost of renting an office space or having a gym membership, as well as the time he saves not having to commute each day and the security that the 24/7 concierge gives him. I think thinking about the cost of living crisis this year, our app allows people real-time access to data about their utility usage and carbon footprint. And we can also push out tips and tricks about how they can make little small changes that reduce their energy usage and therefore save themselves money. So I think resident retention is key, and definitely HomeViews and that community feel does have a big part to play in that.
Fantastic. And I guess just picking up on the customer advocacy sort of angle, how important does it, the role does it play in your marketing strategy, Louise?
It's massive for us. We have a big resident referral scheme where residents receive an incentive when they refer a friend. But what we actually find is that people see our stories, they see their friends' stories, they see the building through video chats. So they know about Moda anyway through their friends, and that's kind of priceless, is that, you know, you can't put a cost on the value of that piece of marketing. And HomeViews as well, it gives us excellent feedback and enables us to improve our offering.
Absolutely perfect. And then I guess Nadia, similar thing to you. What role does customer advocacy play at APO?
I agree with Louise. It also helps us with referrals and what we get through word of mouth. I mean, we actually in few of our developments we receive more inquiries via referrals rather than from Rightmove or Zoopla. And in time to come, we plan to obviously cancel Rightmove and Zoopla because we won't even need it. We receive so many referrals. People just inquire on our website because they read a review on HomeView, and they just come to us direct. And that way, obviously, the marketing cost would go down for us as a business. And I think it's a great tool to use for companies.
Fantastic. I guess you both touched upon the power of the social clubs and forums of the Spike app in terms of building a community. I guess externally, looking at the external social media, what role does that play, maybe Louise, in terms of building community?
So we have a big focus on our social media presence, but people are savvy. They know that we've taken 50 pictures on a really good camera to get that one good picture that we're posting. So that's why it's really helpful that our residents are also posting lots of pictures, because we can share their stories and it kind of feels a little bit more organic. We put a lot of ourselves into our socials, so you'll see the team on our socials quite often. And that's really important to me because it breaks down that barrier between residents and team, because we're working together to make one big community. And we also post loads of dog pictures, because who doesn't love a dog picture?
I certainly do.
Yeah.
I'm always getting distracted looking at dog pictures.
I think the TripAdvisor feel of HomeViews is really key. People trust HomeViews. It gives genuine feedback. And again, we use it to improve. So it's a really useful tool for us.
Fantastic.
I had a question. Well, please, everyone on the call, we've got lots of people who've joined us this morning. So please do submit any questions that you might have, because it is an opportunity to really kind of ask Louise and Nadia about some specifics. And I think that, there are so many companies entering the market for the first time, but also there's lots of companies who've been who are looking to sort of, they're established, they've been working in property for a long time, but actually build to rent is new. And Louise, your experience, you've been launched a year now. And Nadia, you've got some, as you said, you've got some sites that are older and some sites that are newer. And I guess I'd be interested to know kind of if you're at the start of that journey, just almost thinking about what you should potentially be thinking about pre-launch when you're thinking about building a community, how you should be thinking about, what you might want to be setting up with the team, or, kind of almost taking yourself back to that starting position. And I guess, Louise, maybe starting with you, you're 1 year into launch now, so you're kind of doing renewals and things with lots of residents, but going back to that kind of a year ago, how much did you have to plan before then to think about how we build community? Was it very much part of the kind of launch plan and package and strategy for the building?
It's always been very high on our agenda. I think at Moda, we really sell that lifestyle and that neighbourhood and that community feel. I think part of that is the team. The team have got to be right from day one. So yeah, you can recruit a team who have got great skills, great experience, but they've got to really love people and be really bought into that idea that we're creating something special here. Our apartments are beautiful, our amenity spaces are stunning, but it's the team that really bring them to life.
Yeah. And is that similar for you, Nadia? Is it about the team, or is there other sort of structures or things that you'd put in place?
I 100% agree with Louise. I mean, having the right team on site is very important for, building that community feel. It's also important to provide all those tools for people to connect, such as resident app, amenities, any organized events, so people can meet with, their neighbors and make friends and feel that they are part of the community.
Because I guess I think it'd be interesting. I've spoken to some different companies, and I think there's very different training and setup and coaching and support, is that something that's a formal part of your team's onboarding? Because there's obviously, when you've got a new member of staff joining, there's so much that they've got to be trained on in the practical sense, and from a kind of safety, security, running the build, kind of things that actually you need to ensure that they're trained on. But is building a community part of formal training, and or should it be, in your kind of view? I guess just it's so kind of important to the success of the buildings. I just be interested to know what your thoughts are on that as a formal aspect.
I'll take this one. So for us, it's massively important. We have we call them resident engagement managers, and we have one at every site, and they get together. They have chats. They were constantly chatting on WhatsApp, but they have regular meetings so they can exchange ideas. They can go through training with each other, and they can really support people who are new into the Moda family.
Mm-hmm.
Same for us. It's a formal part of the training, so resident engagement. It will be part of the induction week, which we do for all new starters. So yes, yeah, important part.
Yeah. No, wonderful. Well, I think for me personally, one of the things that I saw during lockdown in particular and over the COVID time was the sort of importance of those roles, bringing people together. I think actually I'm going to give a shout out to Akash at Be Here APO, because I think one of my favourite moments of lockdown in terms of was him doing his Keep Fit classes out on the balcony at Be Here Hayes, and he'd be outside. It was like everyone came out of their flats, so nobody was allowed to everyone had to social distance, and they were all there doing Keep Fit on the balconies. And I think it kind of highlighted that kind of in that COVID period how important it was to sort of connect people and bring people together. And I think that's just gone from sort of strength to strength in the last few years across build to rent schemes as a whole. Have you got any great examples, maybe any stories that you would share from your buildings that you think are great examples of building community, or things that have really worked? For putting you on the spot here for any stories, but anything that sort of stands out to you that you think has been a real kind of success, or something where you feel like your company's maybe done something a bit unique or a bit different that's really resonated with residents?
So we find that breakfast events go down really well, or anything to do with food or drink. So if we put on a big breakfast, we'll get really good engagement with that. But also practical things like, I don't know, a cocktail making session. It doesn't feel like forced fun, and it doesn't feel like you're all kind of stood in a corner, not daring to talk to people. It's a really nice icebreaker event for us to do.
Yeah. I think for us, I mean, we actually have quite a lot of residents who become good friends with our resident host team. And I think it's amazing. I mean, it just shows that resident host team or the on-site team, they're genuinely interested in, being that part of the whole community within the development. Quite a lot of our residents and resident hosts became close friends, and they even, like chat on a personal level, share their experiences, talk about where they went on holiday. I think it's amazing part of, you come to work, but at the same time, you don't just work with residents or your customers. You actually have some friends who you can just chat about, your normal life rather than just work-related topics.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Jonny, jump in if you've got any questions, because I've got loads of questions I can keep asking.
No, I was just thinking, actually, I'm going to again put you both on the spot, but so whilst I'm at events, I often speak to new entrants coming to the markets, and I guess they're sometimes worried about giving residents a voice internally. So, using the social clubs and forums and giving residents sort of free rein to voice their, comments and concerns. And I guess from our point of view, it's about creating that transparency, but I would love to hear from both of you in terms of how you've dealt with that, and I guess that fear of giving residents a voice.
I'll go if that's okay, Nadia. So as I was saying, I'm from a really traditional PRS background where we didn't have access to apps where we could connect people, but people find ways to connect with each other anyway. So even if you're not facilitating that, there will be a WhatsApp group somewhere, or there will be a forum, a Facebook group somewhere. So I think if we provide that, we are showing that level of transparency. Sure. For us, we don't police our apps. you know, if there's anything really offensive, then we will take it down. But if people are chatting and giving honest feedback, we need to hear that feedback and we need to improve from that.
Fantastic. Nadia, do you
I mean,
feel
surprisingly, and I know what you mean, Jonny. Some companies would probably be worried, you know, creating these forums where people can connect and maybe share negative experience. We haven't experienced that in our developments. It's all been positive, unless obviously, you know, hot water will go down one night. They will all be asking, is your flat, you know, has same issue? Have you got hot water? So obviously that way they will just share the issue within the building. But otherwise, we haven't seen, you know, any major complaints or negative feedback on our forums and our resident apps. And I think it's just, you know, as Louise said, it's great to, you know, hear the feedback, learn on it, and obviously, you know, make it work for people. If they have an issue, I mean, that's why we're there. We have to sort it for them.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be hiding. I think we should listen and, you know, hear them out. If there is something they have to tell us, they will anyway do it.
No, fantastic. And I guess from our point of view, it's almost better to hear that firsthand as opposed to having maybe a resident getting so upset, so devastated that they feel they have to start tweeting and going, you know, Facebook, or even going to, you know, I guess worst case scenario, going to the press to try and get their voices heard. I guess having it internally and giving them the forum to and I guess the freedom to share, you know, positives and negative experiences. I guess that's the beauty of, like I said, having the teams on site to deal with that and interact and get that firsthand learnings.
Yeah. And what's your experience in terms of getting reviews and feedback? Is it best, do you find, to ask and to do the sort of push notifications, or to ask in the moment at your front desks? You know, how do you go about collecting that feedback more formally and capturing reviews and insights from residents?
I think we found that the best time to, you know, ask for reviews is following events, because people obviously, you know, enjoy themselves, meet the team, meet their neighbors. I mean, most of the time, obviously, they're happy and very positive. At that time, we do ask them, if you enjoy your stay here, if you know, enjoy being part of the community, would you like to leave the review? And we tend to receive quite a lot of reviews following the events.
Yeah, and that's something, Jonny, that now you can actually send those, because you can see on the Spike app who's actually attended the events or who's engaged. So actually being able to sort of actually do specific invitations is all very possible. Is that similar for you, Louise? Do you encourage? I
would definitely agree with what Nadia said. Events are a great place to get reviews, and not to give away any of our trade secrets, but we have a lot of ways that we collect reviews. So we'll have QR codes around the building. When people are booking onto events, we'll have a link on there for HomeViews reviews, and we also contact people directly to ask for reviews. Yeah,
it's just it's the different touch points, isn't it? And it's just I think it's also just so important, it being about the culture of the team. You know, Louise, you mentioned earlier that the team sort of celebrates those successes when they see that they've had a great review through. So if the team's actually valuing that feedback on a personal level, let alone from a kind of company and marketing point of view, and the value that it does for the business as a whole, then they're bought into actually taking the time to ask for it as well, which I think is really key. I had a question which slightly sort of jumping topic ever so slightly, but something that we get asked a lot about is, you have different buildings with different resources, different facilities and amenities. You've both spoken about events, you've both spoken about some of the shared spaces and the opportunities to bring people together. If we had someone on the call who maybe had less amenities in their buildings, would you give any advice to them in terms of some of the kind of the simple things to get right? Or, you know, would that be through having sort of the chat forums in the community, or is there ways that people can do it when they've got sort of less? You know, Moda is the prime example of having, you know, the most fantastic facilities and amenities on offer. You know, are there other things that you'd recommend to anyone who maybe has less opportunity to bring people together in a physical setting? like that?
I think we're still learning what works really well for us. So we're still a relatively new offering to the market. We've opened up lots of sites quite quickly, and from each site that we open, we learn what works and what doesn't, and we take that forward to the next neighbourhood. I think my take on it would be just create spaces where people can naturally talk to each other. It doesn't have to be you've got a dedicated cinema or you've got a dedicated private dining room. Maybe have a multifunctional space that you can use to host a lot of varied events.
Yeah.
In our gatefold development, Hannah, which is under Be Here brand, we almost have no amenities for residents to use. But having said that, that development is receiving the most number of reviews, and it's simply because the on-site team is amazing. They engage with residents on a daily basis. We don't run many events there either, because development is on a smaller scale, so it doesn't have that many flats. But at the same time, when we do events, people appreciate it. You know, everyone turns up. We have very good number of people who come to our events here in Gatefold. So I think the customer service and, you know, the quality of people you have on site, that really makes a huge difference, even though you don't have, you know, other tools like amenities or, you know, resident app as such.
Yeah. Now we've had two questions come in. One of them, I think we've sort of partly answered. So Alex Masters has submitted, what advice would the panel have for single family housing where communal space can be limited or non-existent and there is no one on site every day? So I think you've kind of both sort of partially answered that, but I think also through some of the things that you said earlier, if you'd agree about the fact that you've got opportunities for people to kind of write their own blogs, to create their own forums, to sort of enable them to sort of connect through technology, that they can sort of create these opportunities themselves. So even if there isn't much of a team on site to sort of do that, actually allowing them to sort of connect through a tech platform means that they'll kind of create those opportunities themselves. Would you agree as that as a summary from some of our earlier conversation?
I think so, yeah. And I think going back, you mentioned COVID earlier, going back to COVID, where we pretty much were single family housing, so we didn't have much team on site. Everybody was confined to their apartment, but we still ran really great events. And as you said, using tech platforms and just being creative and thinking outside the box, I think you can still create that community.
Yeah. Absolutely, I'd agree. So almost, if not more important, when people are living individually, to try and find ways, and technology can obviously help bridge that, bring people together, find people of similar interests, and connect them up on a personal level without feeling, you know, forced.
Absolutely. A different kind of question, which I think is interesting. I don't know if you have any experience on this one. So Christopher Holmes asked us, what is your experience with monetizing resident events, for example, collaborative events? So is that something that you've done?
Our Edinburgh neighbourhood do this fantastically well. I think just this weekend they had a big Moda sound session, so they brought in quite a big name artist and they sold tickets, but they also listed it on Eventbrite, so we're having outside people come in. They monetize that really, really well, but there's lots of different things that we can do to monetize events, and they don't have to be on the big scale. In one, whether it could be selling subsidised ice creams. There's lots of things that we do to monetize our events. I think sometimes it's not always about making a big income from these events. It's more about creating that community, and I don't know how you put a cost on that.
Yeah. Nadia, have you got any experience of?
Yeah, we've done a few. Last year we had Christmas fair, which we've run together with the council, and they've invited people from around the area, close area within the development, just to obviously introduce the neighborhood. It was very popular. I mean, Christmas time, everyone is, you know, excited about any Christmas fair or anything, and we had quite a lot of entertainers, Santa and all the other staff and stalls. So it was good communal event, which was joined with the council. I think residents really enjoyed it. They met some people. We invited kids from the school in the area, and they did Christmas choir. So it was really great. So you can organize events using, you know, other communities within the area.
Yeah.
I think it really works for BTR.
I guess just an extension of that question around monetizing, that there are some communities and neighborhoods that have certain facilities which are charged for versus free, or there might be a booking fee. How do you think, if they're launching a community and they want to sort of charge that you have to pay to use the cinema room or to book out the dining room or things like that, have you got any advice about how you get that right? Because I think sometimes people have an expectation, when I'm paying a lot of rent, I should get this for free, or in terms of how you communicate that sort of when you're asking for a payment or a contribution for a facility or event.
I think for us, it was just about making it very clear at the time of the viewing that we do have these amazing spaces, but if you want exclusive use of them, there is a small charge to pay for that. I think the key is that we're pushing the exclusivity of those spaces. With our private dining room, we see really good revenue from that, because people want to have that space. They don't want to have people in their apartments and having to deal with, you know, the 2-day setup and clean down. It's in the space, they can leave it at the end of the day. And kind of it's finished, and they don't mind paying a premium for that.
Yeah.
We do run yoga events or yoga classes on the weekend, and we've done sort of introductory sessions when we've just opened the building, because we have yoga studio, and eventually, because we've opened the gym following the opening the building, which gives them a free access to the gym and obviously the equipment, and we'll stop yoga classes. However, residents have asked for us to continue, and they were willing to sort of contribute. That way we were able to continue with yoga classes. So we subsidize, we pay majority of the cost, and then they pay a small amount per session. So I think it actually works.
Super. Well, hey, we've got no further questions that have come in. So I don't know if, Jonny, if you've got anything else that you wanted to ask, or anything Nadia or Louise you wanted to share?
Not from my side. I think you've got some great insights from Nadia and Louise, and honoured to have you both obviously on the webinar today and giving up some of your precious time. So thank you.
No,
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess just almost as a kind of a wrap up, it would be nice almost for us all to kind of give a final summary of just any sort of big insight that you've kind of a takeaway. It might be something you've said earlier, but kind of any sort of your final message on the importance of building communities. So Jonny, I don't know if you want to go first, if there's anything that stands out for you or anything you'd...
Yeah. So I would say don't be scared of technology, and really embrace the role it can play in embracing. And I think the key word that Nadia and Louise used several times is facilitating communities. So don't see it as a silver bullet to magically, create that community. Obviously use technology to harness that and then bring people together to almost organically do that. And don't be scared. You may get some great feedback, you may get some negative feedback, but just embracing it and allowing you to, as a developer, being open and transparent, and then action it and build that really tight community, which is shown to really have some great impact.
Great. Absolutely. Louise?
I think I said it before, team is key. The team are the people who are front and centre. Everything else is just kind of facilitating that community. The team are the ones who are going out talking to residents, encouraging them to come to events and building that neighbourhood. Yeah.
Nadia?
I agree with Louise. I mean, the team will be the key, but of course, if you have an opportunity, then of course provide them with tools like amenities, organize events, do provide them with resident app. So even though you don't have enough space to have amenities, maybe do offer them resident app, and they can still, feel part of the community and connect with each other.
Yeah. And I think my summary would be, I guess, going back to those first slides in an introduction about how important reviews, customer advocacy, storytelling can be. I think we've heard it from Louise and Nadia today about how important that is for retention, but also sort of promoting why people want to come and be part of your community. I think reviews are a great way of doing that because it's authentic, it brings it to life. There's also other ways, as Louise said, you know, people posting on social media, they're kind of real images about what it's like to live in the building, but it's that authentic storytelling, which is really why there's been such a success in our view for Build to Rent in terms of adoption. And I know through speaking to lots of companies that we speak to and work with that use storytelling in their marketing, they have huge waiting lists of people wanting to move into their buildings because people want to be part of that community. So I think it's testament to the work that's done across the sector, but particularly thank you to Louise and Nadia for sharing the experiences that you've both had at Moda and APO, which were two fantastic companies with really quite phenomenal resident feedback. But thank you for your time today, and thank you for sharing your insights. So we will send a recording of this out to everyone who's attended and everyone who registered. So please do forward it on to anyone of your team who you think might find today's session helpful. And we look forward to sharing more information with our partners and with those partners about how you can work with HomeViews and Spike to sort of integrate easy access to writing reviews through the Spike app now. But thank you for your time today.